for the destruction of the city? No. You know who I'm going to blame for the destruction of the city? The New York City voting population. That's who's responsible. And long and short of it, we get the governments that we deserve. And that's it. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this
week's edition. You hear the IOC is funding a study?
Michael, we're doing the intro. Ladies, again, take two. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us for this week's edition of the Weekly Roundtable. I'm Frank Johnson, co-host of the show and co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation. To my left is my esteemed colleague, Michael Marshall, constitutional scholar and co-founder of the Liberty First Foundation. And below us on the screen, who does not have his camera operating yet, is Michael Vasquez, Dragon of the Bronx, New York's only true independent journalist. Gentlemen, good evening this evening. I see that you've both survived the eclipse.
Of course.
Or have we? Or have we maybe migrated into the afterlife and we just don't know it yet?
We're in the Matrix.
Well, my theory is that
we're in the Matrix, so
this is why
we may or we may not have survived. It depends on if our Energizer batteries lasted.
Well, I kind of believe that the Y2K thing actually took place, and this is the afterlife from 24 years ago. We just don't know it yet.
This is the after. You're funny.
Hey, who the hell knows?
The machines would give us a better life than this.
Or would the machines make us think they would give us a better life than this?
No, they'd do it. Just for the humor of it, if nothing else. Well, Matrix covered it well in the movies. Give people a challenge, but a surmountable challenge, and they'll run through the maze forever because of the hope of maybe. It's like the lottery. The hope of maybe winning brings in people with tens of thousands of dollars, sometimes per month. It's because there's that sliver of hope. Hope was the last thing in the Pandora's box. Why? Because it's the greatest disease and greatest plague on mankind. It's not because it's good. It's because it's bad.
Listen, I watched Sheila Jackson Lee take 10 minutes to try and figure out how to put on a pair of solar eclipse glasses the other day.
What?
There is no hope.
Oh, Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas. Miss, I don't want women to have guns.
The moon is mostly gas.
Yes, and the moon charges the gases of the
Sheila
moon.
Jackson Lee.
Yeah, they charge up during the day, and that's why we're able to see the moon at night, because the gases emit energy, and we're able to see that energy at night. That's how it happens. But don't worry about it, because at least she understands that the sun is a little too hot for us to go visit.
Well, it's better than The View, where one of the ladies on The View, don't care, believes that the solar eclipse was because of climate change.
Well, not only the solar eclipse.
And the earthquake.
But the earthquake. Mm-hmm. Hey, listen, Sunny Houston, I believe that's her name. She also had, when we had the solar flares last year, believed that the solar flares had something to do with man-made global warming causing them. Not that the solar flares cause problems on Earth, but the problems we cause on Earth created the solar flares.
You know, there's a special kind of stupid that believes those kind of things. I don't know. I have a pretty large vocabulary, and I don't know the word to classify that kind of stupid. I don't know the word.
Well, again, this is a highly rated daily talk show that the only reason it's on the air is because it gets viewership. So who are we really condemning here? Sunny Houston and the members of The View, or the people that watch it and eat that crap up as if it's gospel?
Yeah.
We get the governments we deserve.
We do. Okay. Did you see that the IOC is funding a new study?
The IOC.
Yeah, the International Olympic Committee.
About the swimmers, about Riley Gaines and the guy or girl or whatever.
Well,
That one.
let me pop this up here real quick. So basically, IOC says that transgender women have a physical disadvantage.
What?
Yeah.
What? No, let me make sure I heard that right. Trans women, not trans men. Trans women have a.
It's up on the screen.
I'm reading now. That makes no sense. That literally, scientifically, makes no sense.
Okay, the International Olympic Committee has been accused of sinking to a new low after funding research into transgender athletes that claims they are at a physical disadvantage to biological females. The research paper, which has been published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine, reported that physically active transgender women performed worse in certain cardiovascular tests and had less lower body strength than cisgender females.
Hang on. Okay, let's stop for a second. First thing, whoever wrote this, the fact that it made it past an editor, they need to be fired. The journalist and the editor.
The fact that it made the British Journal of Sports Medicine, a
No, that's fine.
scientific publication.
That's fine. Bad studies. That's why you peer review and put out things so that your peers can look at it and go, "That's stupid. That makes no sense. That's scientifically not correct." That's why we do that. So I'm fine with that. But look at the first sentence. So after funding research into transgender athletes, well, full stop. All transgender athletes aren't trans women, or so they're because the way they phrase that in research into transgender athletes that claim that they are at a physical disadvantage to biological females. So we're talking about trans women. You're talking about a study, trans men, trans women, to determine whether or not they're stronger than biological females. Either the sentence is completely wrong or the study is fundamentally flawed, one or the other. And these are things people should pick up on when they say, well, Mike, how can I tell if this is the news is somehow flawed or corrupted or something is wrong? How can I trust it? Look at the words. This is 6th grade English. So we can see in the first sentence, either the study is flawed or the news reporting, because this made it through a reporter and an editor, they screwed up. One or the other is immediately, instantly apparent to us. Then they go on into this saying that physically active transgender women, look, men have denser muscles, denser bone. We have more height. We have more weight in terms, especially because of pure muscle mass. It is
Now,
almost.
Hold on a second. The study's disputing that.
But it can't. It is a biological genetic fact.
Researchers at the University of Brighton also found that, contrary to previous claims, transgenders' women's bone density was equivalent to cisgender females, which has links to muscle strength.
Okay, you are born. Let's go into this. Your muscles and your tendons, your bone density, that's all genetic at birth. Now, you can take medications that will alter that after the fact and reduce it. And there have been many studies that have said, yes, it does reduce to a degree. But to say that this is all, the way they're implying this, again, this goes to the writing. They're implying this as if it's a natural state of being to start with. which is incorrect. This study has a problem, or the writers of this article are revealing a bias.
Oh, they're revealing a huge bias.
Yeah, but do you see why I'm saying that?
Basically, one of the members of this, the authors, who included a member of IOC's Medical and Scientific Commission, said the results showed that sports federations should, quote unquote, caution against banning transgender women from the female category without further research into their individual sports. While longitudinal transitioning studies of transgender athletes are urgently needed, these results should caution against precautionary bans and sports eligibility exclusions that are not based on sport-specific or sport-relevant research, the paper said in its conclusions.
Okay, so this is their Hail Mary, keep them in the sports instead of...
In other words, they're saying, until we have a lot more research, we shouldn't be banning trans women.
You'll never have enough research.
Exactly.
Because it's not there isn't research already there. They're saying because there's always an outlier study, you can't do this until there are no outlier studies, which will never happen, which means they have to be. This is all part of the forced inclusion to the detriment of women. They just don't like women.
Yeah.
That's it. They just don't like women.
There might be call me a cynic. I'm going to come out with something cynical. Imagine that. I think there's a financial component to all of this. That's what I think.
Oh, there's absolutely a financial. Well, both in the study and in having.
No, not in the study. I mean, in the idea that you're going to take a sport that is, run by, participated in by one sex, and you're going to pollute it by completely upending the apple cart and disturbing it and everything else. Let me ask you a question. Young lady's name is what? Riley Gaines, world champion swimmer who had her medals taken away and stripped and all the rest of the silly stuff.
No, Leah Thomas is the one who had them stripped. Riley Gaines is the woman who would have won.
She wasn't allowed to win.
Right.
Came in tied, and they stripped her of the tie to give it to the guy and all the rest of that stuff. Would we know Riley Gaines' name as much as we do if there wasn't so much turbulence surrounding that sport?
No, of course not.
Of course not. Of course not. It would have been a blip on the radar. Nobody would have known nothing. Oh, another woman champion in swimming.
Yeah, but she's not adding. But because we know her name, adds nothing to.
No, it's not. You're getting. Listen,
I'm trying to follow.
More people are paying attention to this crap because of the controversy than would pay attention to it if it was left on its own. So it makes sense for these organizations to change the rules, interject stuff, and bring more eyes to the sport, even if it means destroying the sport, taking away opportunities, making it completely unfair, and all the rest of the stuff. More people are going to pay attention to it, tune into it, and pay and spend money to see stuff than would have otherwise if there was no controversy.
Now, I can understand that someone might pitch that idea, but it's a failed idea because you're not putting attention onto the sport. You're putting it onto an athlete, and that athlete, Riley Gaines, may have some further, whether it's a book deal, movie deal, getting in modeling or other entertainment because of this, because she's gotten notoriety.
They didn't do what
she's gotten fame. Leah Thomas has gotten notoriety, but it's not helping women's. It's not helping women's sports or women's swimming. No one cares.
No, they didn't do it for her. They did it for the sport because they knew nobody was paying attention to it.
Yeah, no one still is.
Listen, nobody was paying attention to WNBA until having people deciding they were going to start kneeling and not showing up and doing all the rest of the stuff and protesting. Nobody was paying a damn bit of attention to women's soccer until you had people that decided that they were going to kneel. controversy breeds cash.
No,
And I
it doesn't, because none of those groups made more money or are more in the spotlight other than the controversy. No one cares about women's soccer.
You're talking you're trying to look at numbers from last year to this year. Let's look at what it's going to be in a couple of years from now. We start looking at the numbers and see what the ad revenue looks like. Let's see what contracts are looking like. We'll see what all the rest of the stuff.
I think you're going to be wrong.
Do this stuff deliberately doing this stuff to bring eyes to the sport, so that when they do revoke everything and bring it all back to some sense of normalcy, now they've got a bigger fan base.
Never going to happen. Doesn't happen. Didn't happen with women's soccer or the WNBA. It's not going to happen with swimming. Yes, there are individuals that can improve their net worth, but it's not going to happen for the industry or women's sports. They're not getting anything out of this.
Swimming is boring. Nobody watches swimming.
So is the WNBA and women's soccer. They're all boring.
Right. So these are last-ditch efforts at trying to bring some notoriety to the sports. And if they have to destroy a couple of the best athletes who happen to do boring sport, what do they give a shit?
Absolutely. I understand your reasoning, Frank. I do. But it doesn't make sense. And it is ineffective. It does not draw numbers. It does not bring people. It doesn't convert people into watching their sport or being interested in or following it any more than they ever did before. These things have happened in the WNBA. They've happened in women's soccer, including the biggest thing for women's soccer is the lawsuit against the men, and it didn't help them. No one cares. It is the percentage of people who pay attention to any of that is basically the equivalent, not even the equivalent of the 1970s and 80s when they had ice skating on to compete with football so that women would have something to watch. And they don't even hit those numbers. And that's from 30, 40 years ago. And they can't hit the audience numbers from then. And no, it just doesn't work for them.
We'll see what happens. All I know is I know what a lead pipe to a kneecap did for women's figure skating.
Nothing.
No, it did. It did.
No, it did something for the women involved. It did nothing for the sport.
No, it did a lot for the sport for the time being. You had a surge of support for that sport over in the next few years that at least put some money in there. I'm telling you, there's a reason.
It gave a bump. It didn't give a bump to the sport. It gave a bump to those individuals. Tanya or Latoya, something like that, and the other one was, I don't know. She's a tall one. There's a tall one, the short one with who's blonde hair. It's Tanya something. She's the only one I remember. There's been a couple of movies. They both got some. They've since gotten money for various things in entertainment, but women's figure skating, no one cares. They didn't care before. They don't care now. It didn't. It didn't even get a bump.
They sure as shit cared. They got a bump, Mike. Trust me.
Only when those two women, what gave them the only bump they got was when both of them wound up in the Olympics and they had to do their routines. And Tanya fell apart and the other one won the gold or something. And because I'm fuzzy on that because I don't care and it's old. But no one cared. They cared for that moment to see those individuals, but the sport, no one cared. No one gave a damn. No one's cared about figure skating or women's swimming. I'm sorry for the women out there who are fans or people who are fans of that, but outside of, professional women's volleyball, no one gives a damn.
I'm saying,
they don't have an audience.
All of this controversy, none of it is hurting these sports. If anything, it's helping them.
I really don't think it is. And I've not seen numbers nor heard of any numbers that would validate that. Not ever. No matter what controversy, no matter where it's coming from, they're not getting any money. It's does nothing for them. Tanya Harding, yes, thank you. Yeah, it doesn't do, none of this stuff does anything for them. I'm sure someone may pitch that and try and spin it that way afterwards and go, we can turn this into something, we can use this. I'm sure someone has had that discussion, but America, one, doesn't care about women's sports. not in any profitable numbers. Not to say no one believes in it, but it's not profitable. Never has been, never will be. And going forward, again, the individuals, but that's true of almost any sport. It's like the decathlon. No one cares about who won the decathlon. It doesn't get attention. No one cares. There's that small segment, mostly people who are into that sport. Yeah, they pay attention, but it's not profitable. Ironman competitions, cycling, same thing. They're all the same thing. No one cares. So women, it's not just women's sports. There's a lot of micro niche sports. No one cares. No one gives a damn.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter. There's always that one person who stands out because they're exceptional or they have a crazy situation. And after that, no one gives a damn. And the sport never does well. Men or women's sports. Hey, we got Mike McLean has a comment. Going off of your current topic, fair enough. Okay, we'll stop that then, I guess. But thoughts of Rashida Tlaib and the Death to America video clips. I did a video on that. I know which one you're talking about. Is that real? I wasn't there. And if so, what the hell? Let me start off that. First thing, Mike, yes, it is real. On April 5th, in Dearborn, Michigan, for anyone who doesn't know, there was a protest in Rashida Tlaib's district in Michigan, in which the pro-Hamas, pro-Palestine organizations got together. They were saying they want America, Joe Biden, to support Hamas in Gaza. They demanded more action and the death of Israel. And they specifically spent time to chant death to America. And their lead speaker spent the time directly stated that he wants to burn down not just Joe Biden, but the entire American system. That means the Constitution, the amendments, our judicial system, all our laws. He wants to burn down all of it. And therefore, he leaves out and to replace it. But, and I have video. I did a short video on it. And yes, we have the video in Dearborn of this. They actually published this. They taped it. They published it. It was available to everyone on the internet. It isn't fake. It is real. And as you can see here, National Review also is speaking of all the means. Most of the left-leaning news media avoided, just abandoned. They did not want to talk about this. They did not want people to know. But that's why the video is so important and why many people like myself published the video showing them chanting to death to America in Dearborn, Michigan, and telling us that their answer is, their solution is not just destroy Israel, but to destroy America and our Constitution. As for the second part of your question, Mike, what the hell? Yeah, what the hell? Go ahead, Mike.
New York doubled down.
Yeah, I know. I saw that too. Well, the difference, there's a difference though. New York City Council having this guy praise Allah, and there is, I think before every meeting, they have a religious leader invoke a prayer. So that the fact that it was a Muslim and he says it in Arabic and in English, okay, that's the same thing as when you have a priest and goes Amen. You have a rabbi and he gives his prayer. They've had Buddhists give their prayer. That one, so I don't count that as being the same thing as what we saw in Dearborn, Michigan, although the timing is interesting. But this, as Grace mentions, this is the stuff you don't see on MSNBC or CNN. They won't publish this. They won't show people the video to let you know how bad this situation is. How we have people who are These aren't Palestinian Americans. These are Palestinians in America. Big difference. It is not subtle. It is not semantic. There is a difference in mindset and lifestyle and culture, and they want to destroy our lifestyle and culture and the progressive movement that supports them. We're talking about Democratic Socialists of America. We're talking about the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. They are telling us, because they're the minority in America, we have to adopt their feelings, their culture, their ideology. We have to bow down to them because they are the minority in America. And my answer to that is, screw you, get the hell out of my country. You have a place. Go back to Gaza. This is America. Be Americans. Have whatever ethnicity, whatever ancestry, religious belief, sex. I don't care. You can be any kind of American you want to be because you're an American. If you want to be someone in America, go back to your home country. We don't need you.
Yeah. If you want to be an American, great, come.
Yeah.
Okay. But come the right way, unlike this gentleman.
Who's that? So this is from News Channel 4, New York. Okay.
Okay.
Man,
April 11, 2024. Man on terrorist watch list remains in U.S. after being released by Border Patrol.
Yeah. He's not the first one.
Okay. An African migrant, notice they don't say what they should be saying.
What
on
other?
terror
What
watch
the other?
list spent nearly a year inside the U.S. after being apprehended and released by Border Patrol agents in 2023. The Afghan national was arrested last month and then released again by an immigration judge who was not told he was a national security threat. Mohammed Karwan, 48, is currently out on bond as he awaits an immigration hearing in Texas scheduled for 2025. There are no restrictions on his movement inside the United States, U.S. officials said. Karwan was initially apprehended on March 10, 2023, near San Ysidro, California, after crossing the Mexico-U.S. border illegally. Border agents suspect he was on a U.S. terrorist watch list at the time of his apprehension because one piece of information matched an individual on the list. But agents lacked corroborating information, which officials declined to describe, that would confirm Karwan was the person they suspected, according to U.S. officials.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised. There's 172 known or suspected terrorists entered America in 2023 alone. Over a 43 times increase, not 43%, 43 times increase versus 2020. And we have seen those numbers climbing. In so far, the last number I saw, which I think was confirmed by CBS, for the first full 3 months of this year, 2024, 69. Initially, we talked about this earlier back in March. It was 54. It is now 69 known or suspected terrorists have tried to enter America that we caught, that we know of. 2 of them, this guy and another one back in March, are roaming around America. And actually, in the NBC article, they should mention that there's another one. So there's potentially 3 of them roaming around America that the news media is willing to tell us about.
And nobody has a clue where they're at.
No, and no one knows what they're doing.
Okay. First off, I don't care what type of hearing you are awaiting for to come to this country. First off, the fact that you are apprehended by Border Patrol means that you are entering the country illegally. Now, if you're trying to claim asylum, then you're supposed to come through a port of entry. But the fact that you were arrested by Border Patrol, the first thing is you should be either put in Mexico, but you're not national of Mexico. So you should be detained and you should be put in a detainment center. You shouldn't be released to go about your way.
Well, I agree that they should be detained, but I believe, and this was a Trump policy, but I believe it's the correct policy, not on U.S. soil.
Yeah.
Because the moment they come onto U.S. soil, there are, depending on which court you happen to be in, especially the more progressive the court, they've had the findings that you instantly gain certain rights and benefits because you touched American soil.
Right.
Which I dispute, and I think that's incorrect reading of law and constitution. Being on our soil does not confer rights beyond the rights you already have as a citizen of a different nation with different beliefs and ideology and legal system. Just being on American soil it's not like this isn't like a vampire movie or what is that? Well, like a vampire movie, and this is holy ground. You touch it, and suddenly, you gain secure sanctuary. It doesn't work that way. That's not the law. But so I would say, detain them, and if we have to, create a neutral strip or a neutral zone or a neutral area between Mexico and the United States. Call it no man's land. And guess what? You're there, but you don't get you don't get the rights. We get to do our proper vetting, which takes 18 months. We find out whether or not you have a legitimate claim, whether you deserve to be in America, and whether you qualify to be in America. Then we let you in, and you get to be part of America if you qualify. And if you don't,
here's an easy solution.
What?
Hold on a second.
Well, you got to tell
people. Trying to get it up.
I know, but you got to tell people.
So, but I got a solution here, right here.
Cruise ships. Yeah,
these are decommissioned cruise ships. Put them on them.
No.
Why?
Yeah, because it's American.
You know why? You don't want to know why? Because I'm sick of the American taxpayer having to foot the bill to house, feed, educate, treat, medicate.
We don't have to flag them as American.
If you want to put them on these ships, put them on the ships, get a tugboat, and push them back down the freaking canal somewhere. I am sick and tired of Americans having to foot the bill for this, and everybody's, oh, what are we going to do with them? What are we going to do with them? Why is it our goddamn responsibility to do anything with these people except put them on a boat and send them back from where they came from, and then send the bill to the country that they left from for the cost of the treatment that they've received? And
you charge
you can
them.
do that. You can do that.
You charge them.
Yeah, but you can't. The governments aren't, because they're going to say that cruise ship has a American berth. It's a American ship. Therefore, that's the same as American soil because it is sovereign, and therefore
get it within a mile of the coast and then sink it.
What?
Get it within a mile of the coast and then sink it. I don't care at this point. I'm done giving a shit. I'm done giving a shit. Understand this. Americans are being murdered in the streets.
Yes.
Their houses are being broken into. Our wives, mothers, aunts, daughters are being raped in the streets, and some of these most violent drug cartels are sending gang members across our border. We get kids being slaughtered in schools. We got buses getting shot up. Our police are getting overrun. Cops are getting murdered in the street. You can't live in a border town unless you've got four guns at every window and door opening to protect your property and your house. I'm done. I'm done with it. We keep absorbing all of this. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Why is it our responsibility to do anything except lock up the friggin' border so nobody gets across of it, and anybody trying to come over the border illegally should be treated exactly the same way somebody climbing through your bedroom window at 3:00 in the morning? should be
If we
treated
were-
exactly the same way with as much jurisprudence.
If we
I'm
were to
done with
follow
it.
the
If
law,
you try to break into North Korea. Try to get into North Korea and see what happens. Try to get into any one of these European countries. Look at Poland. Poland has got zero problems with immigration. Why? Because they got water cannons at their border. Somebody comes over the fence, they blast them with a shot of water back over the other side. Here's your free bath. Go back to where you came from. They're not feeding them. They're not educating them. They're not giving them medication. They're not putting their kids through college. They're not making them eligible for this program or that program. They're not giving them $15,000 American Express prepaid credit cards. They're not giving them all this crap. I'm tired of it.
okay.
When did this country become the nation of suckers that it's become?
Okay. So, one for background on Poland, and just to make sure people know, even before the tensions with Ukraine and Russia, even before then, Poland had borders and walls like 123 other countries around the world. So people are saying, but they only are doing that because of Belarus. That's not correct. This was before the conflict. They were one of the few NATO countries, part of the EU, that were saying they weren't abiding by the open border policy of the European Union, even though they're members. And they restricted that, and they restricted people's entry into their country, and they had the walls to help enforce that. And they did have the water cannons even before.
Okay. You don't want taxpayers paying for it, right, Frank?
Right.
Of course.
Well, here's the solution. In Michigan, inmates can be billed up to $60 a day for the time in county jail.
Who are they billing? The inmate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that.
Well,
Okay. I agree with it on this grounds. Okay. If you are found not guilty, the amount you owe is absolved. If you are found guilty, then it is added in as your fine.
No, I do not agree with that. I think that's excessive. I think that violates the Eighth Amendment. It's excessive because
How's it
my
excessive?
punishment is the time in jail.
How
The loss
is
of
it
my
excessive?
freedoms and liberties,
Because
and the
you are
consequence.
now costing me resources
here,
as
Michael,
a taxpayer for your criminal act.
Vass, here's
Yeah,
how you get
yeah,
around
well-
all this. You know how you get around all this
Okay,
bullshit about
So
this?
you're going
Wait,
to
wait,
punish
wait.
me because you
Wait,
committed
Mike.
a criminal
Wait
act.
a minute. Let Frank answer because I have an answer to you, but I want to hear Frank too. Go ahead.
This is how you get around all this. Oh, that's excessive. You can't do this. You can't do that. If you pass a law that says if you are found guilty of first-degree murder, you are going to get executed. Okay? Everybody knows that that's the law, right? Everybody knows that that's the law. Then you freely go out and murder somebody. Don't complain that you didn't understand that the price was going to be your life. If part of the sentencing guidelines are that the prisoner is going to have to be forced to pay restitution to the municipality that houses them, either upon completion of their stay or for the duration thereof, where they have to work off an incentive whilst incarcerated for those that might be having to serve a life prison sentence, you know it's going to be added on, and you still go commit the crime. Well, you know what? That's an open contract. You knowingly went and committed the crime, knowing that that was going to be the punishment available for you. If you should avail yourself on the court and be found guilty, I don't see the problem.
I do.
You know, it's one thing if you say, well, I didn't know that if I stole this woman's purse, yeah, I knew I could get 6 months in jail, but I didn't know I was going to be charged $100 a day for my incarceration. There's nobody told me about that. All right, well, you only thought that was the maximum penalty. Well, if the maximum penalty is all spelled out and you know that the system is going to allot a fine, a daily per diem fine based on it, listen, screw them. They're criminals.
Okay.
They're criminals.
Hang on. And I'm just as I am just as law and order as any of us here, and probably to a certain extent, maybe even more, depending on the actual charge we're talking about. But I do not agree with that because I do believe it is excessive and prone to abuse. Two, well, actually, one, it's excessive. Two, it's prone to abuse, and that abuse will cause other problems. Three, it's not a preventative. Just like prison and jail sentences, as is, are not preventative. And yes, I do believe in the death penalty. I agree with you on that. You killed someone, you die. I have no problem with that. I think that's equivalent, and that is not excessive. But the again, charging a fee, and that is excessive and prone to abuse. And I do not, and because, especially because of the abuse factor, it will be abused, and it will be something that will cause even more harm and more discord within communities and across this country, even when those prisoners are released. I do think that they should be productive when they're in prison. Break rocks, make license plates, yeah, do cheap labor, but that's not to pay the fine. That's to get them productive. In particular, I'd rather them learn plumbing, learn carpentry, learn some kind of skill, some skilled labor, and also unskilled labor. Learn how to be a line cook, learn how to dig a ditch. This is their time. It keeps them busy, it keeps them productive. It gives them the skills they need, so when they leave, okay, we know we gave you the minimum non-skilled and low skilled, or what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? It's not it is skilled labor, but it's construction, it's carpentry, it's, what do you call that? The word's escaping me right now. You go to vocational. You have the vocational skills to go out and be productive parts of our society in areas that we need. We need these people for that. I'd rather see that, but not because it's a penalty, because that a fine, because that will not deter the crime, and it distracts from other benefits. Go ahead.
So I can go over and maybe, I don't know, join up the welding school over here and pay my $15,000 a year tuition to become a welder. Or I can go mug somebody, go to jail, get that education for free, come out and have to compete with the guy who spent $15,000 to get that education, who didn't commit a crime.
I think we changed the prices on education as is, which is an entirely different subject, is also a problem, especially with the vocational fields. All education, for that matter, is overextended in their pricing. We have prices that are astronomical, and that's all because of the reason why the prices have increased by over it's over double since 1980, and that's because middle management in all education has increased by 300%. We have the government is fueling and funding this because they know, all these institutions, they know, since the government decided to be the co-signer and they assume all of the college debt, every college knows, raise your price. Why? Because the government's going to pay it. It doesn't matter if the student does or doesn't, the government's going to always pay. And that has fueled the increase in middle management, 300%. And we've seen that as we keep increasing these prices, we're not seeing more teachers, and even the cost of the teachers hasn't gone up significantly. It's been management and administration that have increased and sucked up all that money. So the problems are both the United States government in each part of this. It's the United States government that's the problem. We need to get rid of the Department of Education. We need to get the federal government out of this altogether. The prices will drop.
We've already talked about that. U.S. Department of Education is unconstitutional. Okay, and we've gone over that many, many times. I want to get back to this pay for stay.
Mm-hmm.
40 states out of the 50 states in the United States currently have these programs where people that are incarcerated are charged per day of stay.
I get it.
Okay. But I wasn't even going to go into the American side of it. I'm talking about just for these illegals that are coming here.
Oh, sure. I
Okay.
got no
If
problem
they-
with illegals getting that.
Okay. If they're coming here, right, and they want to try to enter this country illegally, make them pay for their own detention. Okay. If their asylum case succeeds, then forgive that. Okay. Because they've got legitimate grounds. Okay. But if it fails, charge them. Okay. And you,
Oh, yeah.
and it was very common back in the early part of our history where you were confined until you were able to pay the fines that were initiated against you or awarded against you as your penalty. And you stay confined until you were able to pay those fines.
See, Mike, if you had started this by saying about the illegal aliens, you didn't put that. That's a key part, because I agree with you. For the illegal aliens, absolutely charge them for everything we can. I have no problem. And I know people are going to say, but Mike, you were just talking about the Eighth Amendment. Those are American citizens. They have rights.
Okay.
That's a different
And
argument.
Now let's go
Illegal aliens
into
have
what
none.
the Eighth Amendment actually says. Okay. So, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Okay.
Right.
What determines an excessive fine?
That is very relative. It's the agreed amount at that time by the legislators. There is no empirical way of saying what's excessive. It is something
Right.
that we agree to as
Okay. And if as a part of your sentencing, you are required to pay for your incarceration, would that be considered an excessive fine?
yes. I would believe it
How
is
so?
excessive. I believe it's excessive because that is the whole
Okay.
purpose of
So you're
the
going to
imprisonment.
penalize taxpayers for a criminal act somebody else committed.
Yeah. I would also change, but we're looking at this in
Because that's
compartmental.
exactly what you're
unit.
doing.
I understand. And I said, yes, but we're compartmentalizing this because it doesn't happen in a vacuum. And it isn't happening in a vacuum. We already do this. This isn't like a radical idea. We're already doing that.
I know we are.
Okay. So I think we can do massive cost cutting on that. I do not like the idea of prison being the comforts of liberty being in prisons at all. I think prisons should be harsh because it's a harsh punishment. It is meant to punish and also to be somewhat proactive in prevention as well, preventative. But I do believe, it feels to me, or best as I understand it, it seems to be like a double jeopardy where you're getting hit with jail and which is already a restriction on your freedoms, and you have the consequences of that in terms of a felony. Now you've lost your right to vote. You lose depending on the type of crime, you may not be able to have certain types of employment or be in certain areas that are considered sensitive to the public, depending on your
Now,
crime.
see, those I think are excessive.
Well, I don't. I don't.
Okay,
I think you
because
should lose
you
your
are
right to vote.
penalizing somebody for life
Yes.
after their imprisonment. After they
Restoration,
supposedly serve their debt to society.
right? Well, that's a restoration of constitutional rights after a term has been served. That is different than the penalty that you serve while you're serving.
I'm not. Yes, and I believe
You can't
that
vote when
having
you're in prison. Okay,
Huh?
you can't vote when you're in prison.
right.
Right now, when they get out, if you want to restore the rights, fine. But you can't.
I
you
think they
can't
should
say,
be
well,
restored.
right. But I would say, if you tell people, "Oh well, what do you mean I can't vote
once
when
they
I'm
are over
that's
their
excessive."
incarceration and their parole, their rights should be restored because their debt to society has been paid according to the courts.
I can see crimes, and there are various crimes, including murder, where I think the debt is lifelong. When we're talking about,
Then they should not be released to society.
I would also agree with that, but that's not the nature. We have early releases for various reasons, parole and otherwise, and we have people that are released. And
if they're on parole, they are still, that is a type of incarceration.
it is not necessarily an incarceration. You get to walk around and have a job. Yes, there are limitations on your freedom, but you're still free. You're not in a cell. I don't count that as the same thing.
Once that parole is over, your sentence has been served.
Yes, I understand, and I do not believe that is commensurate. Again, if my understanding, and again, I'm looking at changing multiple laws. We're talking about which way I would prefer to do it, what I believe is appropriate. And especially when we're talking about cases of murder, attempted murder, when we're talking about a serious harm and injury, I mean excessive serious, not just I punch you in the face. I'm talking about someone's been in a coma for 2 years, excessive extremes of injury to an individual where they can, depending on your location across this country, depending on the exact crime, you can get out in 20 years. Some cases even sooner than that. Under certain circumstances, far sooner than that. No, I don't think it's enough to just have that prison sentence because of the nature of the crime that was committed. And this lifelong penalty of you don't get to vote is part of that. And it is part of the significance of it. Huh?
That is excessive because that not only translates.
I don't believe that is, because that's a life.
Okay.
That's
if
life.
Way it is right now, any current felony,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what it is, you lose your voting rights for life.
I understand. And I didn't say
excessive.
Any. Again, I didn't say any. I'm giving you exact examples. I'm trying to give you parameters where I think that's appropriate. I'm not saying it's appropriate for every single one in every single case.
And most of those parameters that you're detailing,
mm-hmm.
I believe deserve to be removed from society for the duration that they lose their term to vote. Okay,
I have no problem with that either. I have no problem. That's what I mean. So again, I'm looking at a very small subsect where I think the penalty should be that extreme. And everything else, yeah, I agree with you. Everything else, we can make the case that it is excessive. And I am more than willing to say, okay, let's change that. But again, we need a comprehensive review, and it's not to allow for the excuses of it's not my fault. You did the crime. If you made the choice. I was just having this argument in part with Larry Sharp. He's a libertarian, ran for governor of New York. He's also a friend of mine. I have known him for like a decade. And we were talking about OJ. And we kind of went into, and he mentioned the same thing that Charlemagne mentioned, that Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, mentioned earlier in the week about poor people having no choice but to commit crime. And I stopped him right there. That's not real. I hate when people make this argument because it's a false equivalence. Poverty doesn't force you to commit crime. And in that same way, we've now changed our system.
Plenty of people that lived in poverty their entire lives have not committed a single crime.
Exactly. And I've heard people say, well, it's because of 2020. I'm sorry, still nice. You made a choice, a conscious decision to commit a crime for whatever the reason. And you need to be punished for that. And we have a system right now, which has many problems, like the one we're talking about, where we're bending over backwards prison reform, no bail, illegal aliens and everyone being released on a regular basis or not even charged in the first place. To the extent of the law that exists. The law already exists on these things, and we're not even following that. That's, I think, the root of the problem. Everything else comes after that. And again, all of this, because we were talking about initially about illegal aliens, they have no rights to any of this. What we're arguing right now is about how does this how should this affect American citizens? Illegal aliens have no rights, period. They need to throw them into jail. I don't care how small, and charge them every day. I'm really, I know people go, Mike, you're not sensitive. No, because I have no obligation to be. They committed a crime. They inflicted themselves upon us. We didn't ask them to come in. They forced their way in.
Here,
I agree with you on that, Frank.
Here, Dahl Grimm, who is a great friend of the show, he's been on here multiple times with us, having discussions with us and so forth, brings up this comment. Then their debts to society should be considered paid. Okay, let's start with this first comment. Parole is still a case in which, by due process, limitations on free exercise of unalienable rights are limited. When all conditions of sentencing have been met within that due process, then their debt to society should be considered paid and the free exercise should be restored. If they are a danger to society, then due process and sentencing should require their continued limitation. And I would agree with that, including having lifelong parole or probation attached to their sentence after release on certain conditions.
I can agree with that, but let's deal with the reality. That's the ideal. I'm talking about the reality. I understand that's the ideal, and I agree with you. Ideally, that's not the reality of what we live with. So I'm proposing something that addresses the reality of what we have to deal with people who say, I mean, the compromises that we're dealing with and having to make are with individuals who are saying, oh, you can't incarcerate anyone at all. I was at the free and equal debate, a presidential debate amongst third parties. And the Green Party, Jasmine Sherman, they're one of their candidates, a Nergalite. Let me say that again. She's a Nergalite. And anyone who knows 40K knows what that means. She's there saying that we shouldn't have any prisons whatsoever. Her and the Socialist Party candidate, Cecilia de la Cruz, no prisons whatsoever. They're basically they want to disband the police and disband prisons. So, I mean, these are the people we have to work with, and they have a lot of support within the Democratic Party. So I'm trying to find the compromise that has a realistic availability of being enacted and make it. I don't know. But, and by the way, Mike McLean, thank you for bringing up the points that you have so far. Thank you for being with us.
Hey, Mike, I appreciate you stopping in, and I appreciate your comments in the chat.
Yeah.
It's great having you here tonight.
Yeah, I don't be so.
Okay.
Go ahead.
He's a punk. That's my buddy Mike. Love Mike. He's a good guy.
So we have had a discussion in this that as many as 1 in 20 people currently incarcerated are not guilty of the crimes that they've committed, of the crimes that they've been accused of, or that they were imprisoned of.
Those are the estimates, yeah. Some estimates.
Okay. That being said, first off, as you know, I don't agree with plea bargaining. Okay, I believe that every case should go to trial because that's how a lot of these people are wrongly jailed and imprisoned is through plea bargaining. Okay, and basically the prosecution comes in there so hot and heavy that a lot of people believe that they have absolutely no option, no chance.
And it's
Yeah.
also a way where a lot of victims don't ever get justice because the perpetrator who they know did something is able to skate on something that they should have been able to be punished
Right.
severely for.
That's the other thing.
Mhm.
Okay, so there with plea bargains, it goes both ways. Okay, you got victims that don't get the justice that they actually deserve, and you got people being wrongfully incarcerated for crimes that they didn't commit. Okay, so that being said, another thing is a great many of our laws that are on the books right now, if you look at the state constitutions and the federal constitution, if you really dug into them, a lot of them would be invalidated because the jurisdictional, the people having authority technically do not have authority to enforce said law.
Say. So give me an example
There's
of
a
that. I'm
lot
not
of
sure I
laws
follow.
on the books, especially there's felony laws. There's also misdemeanor laws that are on the books that have been passed by various legislatures,
Mhm.
both state and federal. That those legislatures, technically, if you look at their constitutions and their authority, they did not have the authority to pass those laws.
Oh, they have unconstitutional laws on the books that people get punished for at this time. Okay.
Right.
I agree, but part of if we ever want to seriously and realistically look at criminal justice and criminal justice and then want to make reforms or changes to it, the first thing we have to do, quite honestly, and we need to do this for many parts of our government, an audit. We have, God knows, thousands of laws that shouldn't be on the books anymore, or as your point is, unconstitutional, either at the first point or at this point now. They either always were unconstitutional or we now realize them as unconstitutional. And we need to get all those off the books. Let's clear this up. We have way too many laws. We have, again, we've mentioned it before on this channel.
That's the reason why the United States leads the world in the amount of people incarcerated per capita.
That's one reason, yeah, and because we have too many laws and too many and that leaves too many interpretations
Right.
of those laws and and we can punish people arbitrarily because of so many laws. I can't get you for this, but I got 6 other petty laws that I can throw at you back to back and get you that way. And that's a problem. That's a problem.
And they literally have what they classify as add-on laws.
Yeah. Like hate crimes.
Okay. What's that?
Hate crimes.
Hate crimes is one. Another one is illegal ownership of illegal possession of firearm. Because how are they going to prove that unless they're already trying to charge you with something else?
Illegal possession. Okay, you mean illegal possession. So yeah. How would you know?
There are other things. Okay. Yeah. I also don't agree with a lot of laws where the entire premise of the law is to raise revenue. Okay. Yeah. Where they make some act criminal in order to raise revenue for a municipality.
No, I agree. That's just crazy. It is. I agree with you. But we need. Oh, this user has been banned. Says the more numerous the laws, the more corrupt the state. Tacticus. I don't think that's an actual historical quote, but I do believe in the sentiment. We have too much. We need to audit. We need to. But then it's part of a greater movement of just reunifying our nation. We have been so divided. This push towards equity, which is never-ending division. We really need to stop it. I mean, when America has been unified in purpose and in will and in identity, we have led to the greatest benefits the world has ever seen. I mean, ever in history, we have done the greatest things. No other nation has ever come close. But the more divided we become, the more equity we keep injecting into the system, especially by the government, the worse this is all. We're suddenly becoming just another country, which is, and most other countries will be like, no, you can live your life. It's perfectly fine. Yeah, you lived in screwed up countries, and most countries are screwed up and less free than America. We're becoming just another nation. And the precipice we are falling from, it is devastating. Will America still exist? No, we'll still be a country, but we won't be an American country anymore. We'll just be another one of the 147, 190 countries in the world that no one cares about, that are middling at best.
Dude, if our country wasn't so willing to take out loans against our own interest to pay for everybody else's friggin' bills while we police the rest of the world and provide security for it, nobody would give a shit about us at all. I got news for you. We are one of those other 190 some odd countries that nobody cares about. We just happen to have benefits that they could exploit. That's why they seem to care. That's why they tell us they care. That's the only reason we're relevant. We stopped being a country years ago.
Thomas Jefferson believed that no law should be permanent, including our own Constitution.
Yeah,
that every 2 to 3 generations, that every law should be revisited. Okay. And if those generations decided that they wanted to continue those laws, they would continue them, or they could stop them. I personally believe that every law that is ever passed should have a sunset clause on it.
Yeah.
And it should be revisited after a period of time, whether that be 10 years, 20 years, whatever. I wouldn't go much past 20 years, but at 10, 20 years, it should be revisited.
Yeah, and I've heard that argument before. I don't agree with it. Not because I don't think that has a value, but I think that if we do it in that way, we'll wind up at some point, because of abuse, because of corruption, you're going to wind up in a situation where certain laws inevitably will never get reenacted in any format whatsoever. I mean, I'll give you an extreme case that could happen is that murder, because it sunsets on a certain day. And just like we're having the problem with our debt ceiling, which we know is going to be passed no matter what, realistically, they're always going to pass the next one. The budget, we're always going to fund the government for the next, we'll shut down for a week, a month. We're going to start it back up. So these are things we know it's going to happen. Problem is, there is that period of time where it can not exist. That, in this case, murder. It is possible that because of various political machinations, there's a time period where murder would sunset as a crime, and God knows how long we may go. And even one day, because of the magnitude of the crime, that magnitude, even if it's one day, 24 hours, now you have that loophole, those individuals in that time period, in that lapse, the harm that could happen, which is the only reason why I don't like sunsets on certain types of laws. They're too important to ever let sunset. Murder, as an example, and yes, I'm going to the extreme, but we have to, if it works in the extreme, it works everywhere else. We can't allow that to have a sunset period. The consequence is too dangerous. So I agree in principle on certain things to what you're saying, to what Jefferson was saying, but I think there's a certain reality we have to deal with, especially since that isn't our norm and we're in the world today. We can't afford to have a stop. Does that make sense?
It does, but there are ways that you write these laws where there is a sunset time deadline, okay, and you also put in there that this needs to be repassed started early.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how early you start. Doesn't matter. We know the budget, as an example. Again, I'm going to that because
And that's also where we need to get rid of these omnibus bills.
I understand.
The budget, every line item on that budget should be debated and voted on.
I don't
every line item.
I don't question that, Mike, but because there is political machinations, both sides, for various reasons, because there is impasses that happen in our government, that's why they created the omnibus and the extensions, these rolling extensions, these continuing resolutions to keep funding, because we're not, even though that's what we should do, that's not what's happening. That's not the reality.
And that's why we have these problems.
I understand.
And that's why we pay to find out the breeding habits of Mexican locust on a Saturday night in Timbuktu.
I understand that. I'm not disputing that. And that goes to my point. We can't have the sunset. We have to have something that we can fix along the way. We can't stop. We have to have it continue. I'd rather that the government was stuck at $750 billion of spending.
How about this?
Eternally.
And here's an easy way of doing it.
What's that?
Okay. A law that is passed, if it passes with a supermajority, 2/3, 3/4, whatever that supermajority is, it doesn't have a sunset.
No.
Any law that has less than that has a sunset.
No, because again,
because you can get your serious laws passed with 2/3.
No, because it is still possible. And again, I'm erring on the side of
so we continue as standard, we continue the norm, and we continue to go downhill like we are.
I say we review everything, but we understand that we can't have sunsets on certain things. We just have to understand you can't sunset murder. You can't.
Like I said, you get an initial passage of 2/3 majority.
You can't guarantee
then you don't have you don't have a sunset.
But you can't guarantee me that.
If you can't get that, then maybe we need to be reevaluating the law to begin with. I'm sure you can get a 2/3 majority up for murder.
No, I don't think you can. In this environment, with this kind of politicking, with this kind of division in our nation, no, I don't think you can. And I would not risk it. The potential is significantly higher than zero, significantly higher. And therefore, it's a risk I will not take. So I understand the principle of what you're saying. And I'm just saying, and this is the way that we can make it.
And like I said, we continue to fund study to find out what a Tibetan cockroach does on cocaine.
There are problems.
There's huge problems.
Yeah, but it doesn't get better by creating the loophole that's going to be taken advantage of in the future. But it is definitely sunsets are.
Okay, and we can get 2/3 majority. We've done it multiple times throughout our history.
We can. Will it happen now? We don't. We generally on many times.
And a big reason why we don't now is because of the stupid laws we have now.
Well, no, it's mostly because of politicking. That's most of the problem right now is the politicking, the political machinations, the pandering for votes. And that's so I think
no, it is. And a lot of that is because of laws, because most states don't allow for a multi-party
ballot access.
Right.
That's a different.
Okay, that's by law. They are stuck in a two-party system.
I know. And it's very comprehensive. What we're talking about are comprehensive. This is why I said audit. The first thing we have to start with is audit. We don't need the things that are all connected and interconnected that you and I are just going through just in our conversation about it. God only knows how many more. We don't understand. No one in this nation understands the scope of this problem because we've never done an audit. state by state or in the nation itself. We've never done an audit. We need an audit so we can even understand the scope of how many problems we need to deal with, or where that root cause potentially is, that we could nip it at that root, pull that out, and then everything else afterwards is solved because we got rid of the root problem and all the branches die. It's difficult. It's a difficult conversation that we have to have with seriousness. Dow says just because the reality is one thing doesn't mean we shouldn't be striving for it. It's how we strive for it. I get it. And, Dow's with you, Mike, and with Frank, but I'm disagreeing only in the feasibility of it, the realistic feasibility. I'm very much a realist. User has been banned says it's almost like government doesn't do its job.
And you're exactly right on that. Government doesn't do its job. And a big reason why our government is failing is because we, the people, are failing.
Well, yes. We need more people voting. Absolutely.
Well, not just voting. We need more people actively engaged in their governance.
Well, when I say voting, I mean voting from the entire process. That's petitions, that's the primaries, that's the general elections. It's an informed voter, not just, I saw this ad. And
Speaking of voting,
I was going to say, I talk to a lot of people. There's a lot of people that shouldn't be voting at all. I'm serious, because if it's one thing, you can be well informed, you can be well intentioned. There are seldom people that are both. And I'm finding less and less of either to begin with.
Okay.
Well, yeah. Go ahead.
They're trying to get people to believe that non-citizens are not voting in federal elections or even state elections.
Well, that's a lie.
We know for a fact is not the truth. I saw on X today that, let me get up here. Brian Cranston claims that he has these facts.
Brian Cranston,
I don't know what organization. Oh, the Brennan Center for Justice said that there were only 30 of 23.5 million votes they examined in some areas where the most non-citizens voted illegally. That's 0.0001%. And there are already laws against this, obviously. Okay. So what are you saying, Brian, here, that if there's a law making something illegal, we don't need more laws to make it even more illegal?
Well, first of all, and this guy, his name is Brian Cranston Stein. So the first name, you sounded like you were talking about the actor.
Yeah.
Well,
from Breaking Bad.
He's a jerk off.
Yes, he's a leftist. Obviously, he's
huge leftist.
Yeah, he's pushing the leftist agenda, and he says himself that he's a political commentary with NFTs, and yeah, okay, that's all I need to hear. But he's taking the leftist ideology and he's running with this idea, and I understand that he has a study, which he won't actually link the study. He's telling us what the study said rather than showing us the study itself, because I truly doubt, and I know for a fact the numbers are wrong, because we know that San Francisco already passed a law to allow illegal aliens to vote in their state, in their elections, and they don't have separate ballots for federal, local, or state elections.
No, they don't.
So if
that's the only way that you can actually prevent, if you're going to allow illegals or actually any non-citizen to vote in any election, you must separate every other election from that specific election.
Which we don't do.
No.
And and they know that for a
and
fact.
have separate ballots, and we don't do that.
Yeah, and perhaps the only reason why, and what he in the portion of the study that he's pointing to, and I hate when they do that, he's not even quoting, he's not even putting it in quotes, so we don't know how legit he's being at all about this. But the only reason why we wouldn't know more, and we don't have an exact number, is because San Francisco also refuses to do an audit on their elections to show us, oh, these are the illegal aliens that voted, that we gave a right to vote, and they voted in federal and was counted in federal. They won't even do that. So you cannot legitimately or honestly look at the American people and say illegal aliens aren't voting. In addition to that, we have many states like New York where illegal aliens are allowed to get driver's license, which is actually illegal to do, but we've allowed them because we've gone into the sanctuary state.
And in most of these states where they're allowed to get driver's license, they are automatically registered to vote.
Right. That's part of that is another thing. New York State, Pennsylvania, if you get the driver's license, you're automatically registered to vote if you're not already registered. Therefore, you just gave it to an illegal alien who goes through the system, is automatically registered. And only if someone notices or flags a problem for that individual do they recognize and go, oh, that's an illegal alien, they shouldn't be registered. It's not proactive, it's reactive, which means they can vote in elections. And we're seeing this constantly. So he's not being legitimate. He is being, the data he's presenting
and neither is the Brennan Center, which is a left-leaning organization.
Right. So on the face, they are empirically incorrect. That is factually provable. And I believe I've given the argument to do so. And yes, user has been banned. He might be a paid shill. The Brennan Center is. That's for sure. But that is one of the problems. I'll be right back. One sec. Keep going.
So this is something that should interest you, Frank. You see what happened in Washington?
Are we talking about the FISA?
No. Of course, they're going to make me do this.
No, for crying out loud. I'm over here on my screen trying to click it. It's not working.
What's this?
Okay. So I'm trying to show this.
Top left of that box. Top left of that box is next.
There it is. Okay, let's try this again.
Oh, are we talking about the new regulations ATF put on firearm things?
Washington's high ban on high-capacity gun magazines ruled unconstitutional.
Because it always was.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought you were talking about
a Cowlitz County judge ruled Washington's ban on high-capacity magazines unconstitutional on Monday. Minutes later, the state Supreme Court administered an emergency order keeping the law on the books while the state appeals the decision.
That's called a stay.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, actually, they issued an immediate injunction.
Okay. No, it wasn't in the injunction was already. Okay. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, for the life of me.
Gary Brasher issued an immediate injunction, and the state Supreme Court issued a stay on that injunction. So you're right.
You know, listen, I know a lot of people, they for some reason wrongly assume that a magazine capacity ban is somehow going to save lives.
Nope. Yeah, they think that.
I cannot for the life of me understand. And it's funny because it's usually people that have absolutely no knowledge of firearms whatsoever. But it's not even a matter of the people that have no knowledge of firearms that would support magazine capacity bans. It's no knowledge of common sense.
No.
Listen, if you're somebody who believes in magazine bans, I want you to consider this. You have 3 parties that are involved in a crime. You have the perpetrator of the crime, the victim of the crime, and the people that come to investigate or enforce the laws having to do with the crime. This would include police, firemen, EMS, the court system, and everything else. That's people. The first one is the perpetrator of the crime, and then the middle one is you, the victim of the crime. The guy who's committing the crime doesn't give a flying shit about the capacity of a magazine. He does not
is playing music.
He does not care at all about the capacity of the magazine.
Oh.
The law enforcement gets to the scene of the crime. They're usually there in an investigatory outing. They're never going to really show up while the crime is taking place. That's very rare. They're going to show up to investigate. But either they're there to investigate or they're there to intervene. They are not subject to a magazine capacity limit.
No.
Cops can show up at the scene with any magazine loaded with any number of projectiles. Okay. The only person that a magazine capacity ban affects is the victim. The victim is the only one of those three components that has the immediate ability to defend themselves from the perpetrator, who doesn't care about this. If you are supporting magazine capacity bans, what you are doing is saying, I want to take every method of defense I have, voluntarily give it up to a party that it doesn't apply to and a party that doesn't care about it. It makes absolutely no sense why you have three people in the ring, two boxers and a referee. You're the only one who, the guy who's punching you can wear headgear, a mouthpiece, and all the rest of that stuff. And you're going to be standing there in the middle of the ring, no headgear, no mouthpiece, your hands bound together. And the referee, well, he don't care. He's just going to get to watch the other guy beat the crap out of you. Do you think that this makes a difference? If somebody comes into a place, they're going to do a mass shooting. If we limit them to 10 rounds, they'll have to change magazines, and then we could tackle them in between the changes of magazines.
That's what they think of. That's what the leftists think.
Yeah.
That there'll be that miracle lunge that will somehow stop them, which virtually never happens in reality. It is a myth for a reason.
Right. Now,
and right here,
hold on a sec, Mike. If I was allowed to actually show you a firearm without YouTube or somebody else deciding to take us out, here's two different magazines. Okay, this is a 15 rounder. This is a 20 rounder. These are for a 9mm handgun. If I expend this and then I need to put this in to the same firearm, how much time do you think it's going to take me to do that?
Well,
I can swap magazines in under a second and a half.
I've seen it take
on any one of my firearms on a second and a half. If there's a mass shooting involved, are you a 1.5 seconds away from the shooter that you think you're going to get to that person and tackle them to the ground and leave them of their firearms so that they can? No, you're not. So why would you then allow yourself to have that additional capacity taken from you when that additional capacity might be the thing that saves your life?
No, I just want to add one thing to that, because I've heard the argument, and I've seen the argument. I've been in debates with the argument of that 1.5 second miracle. And they'll normally say, the argument from the left normally is, well, that's because you know about firearms. This is their argument. Well, you know firearms, so that's why it takes you a second and a half. But an average person, a normal person with a firearm, they're going to take longer. Now, I want to debunk that, because you can very easily go on to YouTube or any of the video engines out there, and you can search for this. There are multiple police departments and state police departments that have taken individuals who have never handled a gun before in their life and put them into a firing range, shown them how to load and unload a firearm, and they have timed them multiple times, 10 times of loading and unloading a firearm. This is on the same day within hours of them ever having a firearm in their hands, and the average is 2.25 seconds. Yes, an expert, someone who's very familiar, second to a second and a half. You're right, Frank. But I want to make sure people who are watching this, people who've never heard this, you didn't know, and you can find this research, you can find this data. The average for someone who's never held a firearm before, 2.5 seconds.
Well,
2.5 seconds, you're not going to clear the average distance between, final thing, the average distance as has been recorded. The data says that when you have a shooter, a mass shooter in an event, the average distance between them and their closest victim when they start firing is normally 25 feet. You're not covering 25 feet in 2.5 seconds. Not humanly possible.
No, your reaction time, your speed, and the fact that your flight and flight mechanism isn't even taken into consideration yet. You're mostly in shock at the time that something like this is happening. There's so many damn things that go around. We did a video, prepared a video. We were on a field. I have my AR-15. I have two 30-round magazines. I'm aiming and firing up the range. I have a friend of mine who's 25 feet to my left. 25 feet to my left. It went like this. I said, I'm going to fire 30 rounds in an unspecific rhythm. I'm not going to tell you how fast or how slow or whatever. As soon as I stop firing, charge me. Charge me. If you can get to me before I can start firing again, then you win. We reenacted that about a dozen times. He never got a third of the way to me before I was able to change magazines.
I believe it.
Because you know how when you have somebody firing off a whole bunch of rounds, you know what you're not doing? Counting. You're not counting. Oh, was that 29? Because, I mean, not for nothing. Remember the Dirty Harry movie? I bet you're wondering, did I fire 5 or did I fire 6? If you can't count the 5 or 6, how the hell are you going to determine whether or not I just fired 30? What if I have a 50-round drum magazine? What if I have 25-round magazines? I fired 25 and put another 25 in, and you didn't know I put another 25 in. I fire another 5 shots. You think I just went through 30. It's surprise I got 20 more that you didn't know about. What are you doing? You don't make any sense. You don't make any sense at all.
These are the arguments that the left come up with. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Okay. So here's the reason why, the exact reason why magazine capacity bans should be all deemed unconstitutional. In 1946, in Athens, Tennessee, there was a sheriff, a corrupt sheriff, that was investigated by the Department of Justice in 1940, 1942, and 1944. Okay. The person, Paul Cantrell, Democratic candidate for sheriff, came from a family of money and influence. Okay. He basically got a bunch of his lackeys to serve as his deputies. During the elections of 1946, his deputies actually shot one of the people that were a member of the Veterans Party that was trying to ensure that the election was legitimate. Okay. These veterans eventually took up arms and seized the county building the county seat and basically forced the these authorities to surrender after a battle. Okay, this is why common everyday citizens need access to the same weapons that our law enforcement does. Right here is an example within our own history of a corrupt sheriff who was rigging elections, known to be rigging elections, and where the citizenry had to take things into their own hands because the government failed.
Yeah, there's a lot of examples of it, and I notice there's always real world, obvious empirical data that we will use because we believe in the Second Amendment. And we have all this data, all this evidence, all of this reality that shows how wrong the individuals like David Hogg are. And the left, you ever notice the left, all they have are feelings. That's all they rely on. Did you guys see Spike Cohen and David Hogg? They had a debate at Dartmouth College over in New Hampshire this week. It was Wednesday.
I saw the Chinese national, now an American citizen, who got in Hogg's face. It was a thing of beauty.
Lily Tang Williams. I know Lily. Lily is, I've spoken with Lily many years, and I've done an interview with her as well, two interviews with Lily back when she was in Colorado. So that's who was speaking. And yeah, Lily did fantastic. She's literally the most ardent Second Amendment defender I have ever met in my life. And she was born in China under Mao, which is why she's so ardent about supporting the Second Amendment. But the entire debate, listening to David Hogg, who was brought there to Dartmouth because he was an expert. And he was there to debate Spike Cohen, who happens to be a libertarian, but was a United States national vice presidential candidate in 2020. And I've interviewed Spike as well once, but I did get to do an interview with him. I knew this was going to be embarrassing, but it is amazing that the expert from the left brought in specifically for this debate, specifically to defend and show why his views on gun control are so wonderful. He's one of those, he would have helped support Washington in getting the magazine ban in the first place. He believes in all bans of firearms. It is insane. And if you listen to him, nothing but feelings. Every part of his argument, he had no data, nothing. All he could do is make personal attacks, attack the collation of the data, not even the data itself. He's arguing that, you got it from this site, but that's not who published the study from the UN. You didn't you didn't get it directly from the UN. You got it from another source. So it's invalid. This is his argument. It was all about feelings. They always do that. They never consider the reality. 2.5 seconds for a novice to reload a firearm. The fact that criminals don't care about what the law says about firearms. The fact that the person who's most likely to be affected by this isn't a cop, isn't the criminal, but is an individual. There you go.
Here's from Shooting Nose Weekly. Okay. Yeah. Chinese immigrant torches David Hogg at Dartmouth gun control debate.
She's a naturalized citizen.
Question. Welcome to my live free and die state. Actually, I'm a Chinese immigrant who survived communism. Mm-hmm. And under Mao, 40 million people were starving to death after he sold communism to them. And 20 million people died, murdered during his Cultural Revolution. So my question to you, David, is can you guarantee me, a gun owner tonight, our government in the U.S., D.C., will never become a tyrannical government. Can you guarantee that to me? Answer: there's no way I can ever guarantee that any government will not be tyrannical. Well, the debate on gun control is over because I will never give up my guns. Never, never. And you should go to China and see how gun control works for the dictatorship of the CCP.
Yeah, that's Lily Tang Williams talking to when she had the Q&A, and she was the second to last person to leave to ask a question at the debate. I saw it live.
Hey,
Yeah,
real quick,
go ahead.
you guys continue this conversation. I have a family phone call I have to tend to, so I'm going to be jumping off of here real quick. Just wanted to say goodnight to you guys. Enjoy the weekend. You guys all be safe and shoot straight. I didn't want to interrupt, but I had to, because I forgot to say that our OJ expired. Got to go to the store.
You're funny.
Yeah, let him
Yeah,
burn
the
in
juice
hell.
is gone.
We're out of juice. He's empty. All right, kids. Have a great weekend. Enjoy yourselves. I'll be a year older by next show, so be good.
Which will be good.
Stay safe, Frank. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, Lily is great. You know, when I first interviewed her when she was running for Congress in Colorado, I found her to be unique. So I'm not surprised. And literally, if they had given her, Spike Cohen spanked David Hogg. The big joke going around is, Spike roasted Hogg. The joke is that Spike Cohen is Jewish. So that's the other thing. That's the other joke is, can Spike Cohen, a Jew, roast a pig, a hog? And that's the big joke about this debate. But Lily would have been even more brutal. If you think that's not the worst thing she could have said to him.
No.
And I'm not talking about being insulting, just educational wise, especially in terms of her factual firsthand knowledge of what it is to be in a country where you don't have any right, let alone the right to defend yourself.
Right. Well, and that's something that we take for granted here in this country so much. And we think that we're making things better by taking away our freedoms. Well, that is actually what made this country great, is the amount of freedoms that we have. Okay. And you start taking those away and you start taking away our greatness. Plain and simple. Biden administration got another shock this week too.
Which one?
Inflation came in higher than expected. Inflation comes in hotter than expected in March. U.S. consumer prices came in hotter than expected in March, according to the latest data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics released Wednesday morning. CPI rose 0.4% over the previous month and 3.5% over the prior year in March.
Yep.
An acceleration from February's 3.2% annual gain in prices. The data matched February's month-over-month increase.
Yep. Inflation's rising again.
Yes.
But they love to say, but we're down from the peak. Please remember that, folks. It's down from the peak of August.
What I have up on here is literally the inflation charts. Starting from 2019, the last year Trump was in office, to current. Okay. And right at the end of Trump's term, you see inflation had a huge drop, dropping down to 0.3%.
Because nothing was being bought.
Okay.
We were stuck.
By May, that was down to 0.2%. That's Biden's 5th month in office. And then all of a sudden it starts climbing and climbing. And by 2021, stop moving around so much. By June 2021, we're at 5.3%.
Yeah, and
By
by the
June
way,
2022, a year later, we're at 9.1%.
yeah, their chart, by the way, is not the correct chart. I understand to get the data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, go to the St. Louis Fed, which is the Federal Reserve of the United States, and look up the inflation chart. They have, this is an adjusted data. This is the wrong chart. It's even worse than what they're showing you. But go on, go on. I know the chart, so that's what I'm saying. Go ahead.
So, okay, even now, we're at 3.5%. Okay, even at the lowest of this downswing at 3%, we are still higher than what it was under Trump. Okay,
Yeah.
and this is the chart from Yahoo Finance. Okay, and yeah, it's probably a lot worse if you look at the right charts.
Yeah, that's an
Okay,
adjusted chart. I look at this data, and I looked at it when it came out. And again, the St. Louis Fed has a unaltered, unadjusted actual chart of inflation, not the monthly adjustments. So it's very different. We've been August 2022, we were at 24% inflation. We're currently at between 17.5% and 18% inflation, depending on the exact source you use. That's the number. And we surged. This is a surge that started in February of 2021. There, in fact, was no dip. That's the readjusted numbers. There was no dip. We actually just went straight up under the Biden administration. But according to Biden, everything's fantastic and the economy's great.
And we're finding out, that full-time jobs are being replaced by part-time jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So we're losing tons of full-time jobs, and all these big job numbers that Biden is saying are either temporary jobs or part-time jobs.
True.
Okay. So they're not going to last. Yeah, they look great on paper until you dig into it just a little bit.
Well,
and it doesn't take that much to dig into.
No.
And here's another thing that's going to make inflation even worse is when you've got states pushing stuff like this. Okay. We all know California made fast food, unless fast food restaurants that have a certain number of locations nationwide must pay $20 minimum wage unless they make their own bread, which was a concession that was put in by Governor Newsom, who happens to have a huge campaign fund
donor
contributor.
Yeah.
Right? Or donor. Yeah, that's what I was trying to look for. A huge campaign donor that happens to own Panera.
Mm-hmm.
And that donor is exempt from the $20 an hour minimum wage, along with Newsom's restaurants that he owns.
Yeah.
So
Newsom has less than 600. He has less than 600 locations throughout the entire state. So he gave his business an exemption. And so he's not paying people $20 an hour, though he's forcing most of the fast food businesses and other businesses in his state to pay that. And the price of food has jumped by about 25% throughout the state.
Okay.
Same day.
And on top of that, We have seen multiple restaurants that have had to close down. Other restaurants that didn't close down that have actually laid off people in order to, and the exact thing that we predicted would happen if you raise the minimum wage is proving out in California.
No, what happens everywhere where they do this living wage or even the minimum wage, talking $12.50 or $15. It is when you are doing that, when you are creating such a chasm and jump from the current minimum wage, and you're doing so to an arbitrary number purely because of politics and the way the number sounds, you always get the same result. And again, these aren't numbers that you and I are just coming up with out of the top of our head in terms of unemployment and the damage to people's lives. This is coming from the Congressional Budget Office 3 times. They have been, actually, correction, 4 times they have been asked this question. 3 times directly about minimum wage, $15 an hour minimum wage. And the 4th time in talking about the consequences of a living wage. We have seen this 4 times that the Congressional Budget Office has looked at it. Every single time they come back with the same results that are duplicated in real life. It happened in Manhattan. It happened in Colorado. It happened in Washington State. It's now happening in California. It happens every single time.
Yeah, it does. Okay. So what do you think? Oh, and here's another thing that's going to also have an impact on inflation. Even though they will try to say that it won't, is, hold on a second, is this here? Bernie Sanders' proposal.
Oh, God. 4-day work week. I already know what it is.
Yes.
4-day work week, which is another stupid idea that doesn't make any sense. But it sounds good for an election to get money. He's getting donations for it. It's a stupid idea.
Yeah. So
sorry, I'm stealing your thunder
trying
and showing
to
the
push
article.
forth a 4-day work week. Okay. And require that businesses still pay everybody for 40 hours worth of work.
Yeah. Well, even whether it's paying people, his concept is you can do the extra work. And what he's doing is he's turning into a slave driver. Here's the part that no one talks about, that Bernie Sanders and the left don't want to talk about. Say you work in a company and you have to make 10 widgets. Doesn't matter what it is. You got to make 10 widgets and you have to do that in a week, 5 days. So every day you go into work and you make 2 widgets per day. Fine. Here's the part where now you have to work 4 days because Bernie and the progressive bros all decided they got elected for some, God help us, they get elected or they get this pushed through. Okay. You're like, hey, great. I have 3 days off. Yeah. What you forgot is you still, for that business to still exist, to be able to pay you, to still be able to have a job, you still have to make your 10 widgets. Now you have 4 days to do it in. So now you're doing roughly 2.5 widgets a day to get this in the same amount of hours in less of a work week. So you still got an 8-hour day. And now you've got to do more work or work harder or work less efficiently to do more work to accomplish the same goal, but you have less time. That's just one facet of the negatives that Bernie Sanders doesn't want to tell anyone. It's really horrendous. And he tries to say, well, they do that in France. And France has They have protests and shutdowns every week, it feels like. But realistically, every other month. For 6 months in a row, they have a protest of one of their various government functions. The country shuts down in the middle of the summer. It's a horrible existence. And let's be honest, no one's looking at France as the economic powerhouse of the world. They look at the United States. Matter of fact, Japan actually did this. Japan did this for 10 years. Productivity dropped by 22%. It failed. The government of Japan already tried this. It already failed. Why are we doing that? And again, Bernie Sanders doesn't want to tell you that part either. And thirdly, the federal government doesn't have the right to do that. They don't have the right to make that choice.
No, they don't. And on top of it, they also don't have the right or the authority to make this choice either. Bernie and AOC are teaming up together for the new Green Deal for public housing.
Oh, God. They're out of their minds.
So basically, what they are proposing, and they're wanting to invest between $162 billion and $234 billion over the next 10 years to decarbonize all public housing units and build even more green homes.
It's a waste of money. It's just a complete waste of money.
It's a waste of money, and it's something they don't have authority to do. Okay, this is what we've got to start harping on. Okay, this is out of their purview of authority. This is not authorized by the Constitution. They have no authority over any type of housing. Public housing should be at the best, okay, at the highest level, should be a state-controlled item, not a federally controlled item. At best, okay, there should not be any federal involvement in any type of public housing or welfare or any of that stuff. Okay, if you look at our Constitution, there is not a realm for it. Okay, and it can be better handled. The best place to handle it is locally. Okay, because the needs of somebody in New York City differ than the needs of somebody in Ames, Iowa, which differs to the needs of somebody in Princeton, Missouri. Okay. Those needs, okay, even just within the state of New York, my needs here in the upstate New York are far different than Michael's needs in New York City. Do you agree with that, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. Different areas, different businesses, everything's, you can't be blanket on it. Huh?
Right, exactly. And that's why any type of assistance type programs need to be handled at the local level, not at the federal, not at the state levels. They need to be handled locally because local people understand the needs better. And that's why most churches used to handle this, because they understood the needs of the communities that they served.
Yeah. Yeah. It's again, it is the micromanagement of government. It is dehumanizing. The government has to step in for you. They have to step in for business. They have to control every aspect of your life and livelihood and the opportunities that are there for you, which only serves to increase the number of restrictions on your freedoms, not to expand them, not to maintain them. It's horrible. And we know. And these are people who have failed economically and in terms of their legislation, failed ideas about the economy, failed ideas about climate and climate change. I mean, AOC is the one who came up with the first Green New Deal, which included and required a national train going from New York to Hawaii, a train running across the water in the Pacific Ocean. these are the brain trusts that were actually. I don't understand why people
Yeah.
even listen to this.
And the environmental damage, and this is what people don't get and don't understand. The environmental damage that many of these green programs are doing is catastrophic. Okay, we're seeing where these large solar farms are being put in. We are seeing local increased heating being caused by these solar farms.
Mhm.
The offshore wind farms that they're putting in, we are seeing highly detrimental impacts on the ecosystem, the aquatic ecosystems where those are being placed.
Mm-hmm. Which says nothing about the raw material, gathering the raw materials, processing and shipping, refining, the entire process for every, whether it's the wind blades for the turbine wind blades, or the batteries for electronic vehicles, or the solar panels themselves. Every single step of the process is more creates more pollution and more greenhouse gases than any of these devices, individually or as a group, are able to preserve. It's every study has shown us that they are bad. They are worse for the climate than if they didn't exist.
And here's something else. If you are to become completely reliant upon solar or wind, okay, and not have any other type of energy source out there, and let's say we do a combination of solar and wind, you still must have some type of electrical storage system to maintain grid power for durations when wind isn't blowing and sun isn't shining.
Yeah, we've seen, and again, if you want to use the examples of Germany, France, most nations that have tried to adopt a predominantly, if not entirely, green energy sourced energy base, electricity, they have always failed. It doesn't work, which is why they always build backup generators, which are gas, oil, or gas fueled, or nuclear power plants.
Germany's bringing back its nuclear
Every time, every single time. In fact, you didn't even have to believe you and me. Remember Planet of the Humans, which was produced by Michael Moore, far left as you can possibly get. It was a bunch of leftists. You don't have to believe us. Also, go to President Obama's czar on renewable energy and ask him. The sources and the scientists are all out there. It's very clear. It's very clear about this, but it's not popular at the colleges to tell people the full details. It doesn't push their agenda, and that's why we don't hear it. And that's why AOC, that's why Bernie Sanders go with the catchy headline, and they never take the serious questions. Never.
No, they don't. Okay, we're closing on 2 hours now, and honestly, I've got a ton more stuff that I could go into tonight. Like Biden does another round of student loan forgiveness.
Bribes.
And here's something that they never point out. The median income of people that are receiving student loan forgiveness is $86,000 a year.
That must be a new one. The last one I saw was it's predominantly white women who make about 60,000. That's the last number I saw. So it's now up to 80,000.
It's 86,000 is the median income of people that have received student loan forgiveness. The average income of people in the United States is 76,000 a year.
That have gotten.
So you've got people that are making $76,000 a year paying for people's loans of people that are making $86,000 a year.
The poor are paying for the rich.
Yes. On top of that, there is a large number that are making over $100,000 a year that are receiving these student loan forgiven, these loans being forgiven.
One of them being Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Anna Presley, and also Cory Bush. All three.
Now, on top of that, in Biden's latest round, what he's going to forgive is if you have a student loan of less than $12,000 and have been paying on it for 10 years, your loan is going to be forgiven. If you have a loan for $12,000 that you've been paying on for 10 years and you haven't been able to pay that off, something is very, very wrong with the loan program.
And maybe just people. And those are the people who are paying on the schedule, exactly on the schedule, and never paying anything extra into it, not considering any of the interest or anything. Those are the only people who do that. Everyone else pays it off ahead of time.
If you paid on it for 20 years or longer, you can have even higher amounts forgiven. This actually demonstrates the exact reason why our federal government should not be in the business of granting loans to citizens of the United States. They don't know how to manage a loan.
Well, that's one of the problems. The other is it's being used to buy votes. This is bribery.
It is. Okay, that's the second reason. But it is very obvious that the federal government does not know how to manage domestic loans.
No. Poor business, the government makes poor business decisions because it's not a business. It doesn't know how to run. It could never compete. No business could run with the amount of losses that the government runs every year in every department under every aspect of what it does. So why would we expect them to be any smarter about the aspects of business it wants to micromanage? It doesn't know what it's doing, and now you want it to have control of something that's going to affect our nation? No. But I think the bigger issue is this is a bribe. It's bald-faced in front of everyone's face. It's being promoted as if it's a good thing, and I'm sure all the people who are getting the money waived, either the people who've gotten it waived or the people who are waiting to get it because they're in line next. There's always that next student who goes, well, mine too. Take care of mine too.
Yeah.
And that's part of the bribe. That's the heroin. The first dose is free. Now you're hooked. You're addicted. It's the way to steal your rights with a smile on your face. Yes, please take my debt and I'll vote for you so that the next round, it'll be me who gets the money waived. Eventually, maybe.
This last round was $1.7 billion.
Yeah. 277,000 people.
Okay. So, I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous what we are doing in this country. Okay. The government has usurped so much power that, and it's in areas where they have no business having any authority in, and they are totally screwing it up. And because they've screwed it up so badly, we now find ourselves in this position where we are forgiving people on loans for $12,000 that they've been paying on for over 10 years.
Yeah. The bigger problem is we created this problem in the first place by allowing colleges to expand. Sorry, heard my dog. To expand their tuitions without having a commensurate expansion of the services to students, just the administration. It was abusive. It is abusive. And we allowed that. And these are consequences of that, especially when it's being wielded politically.
This is what happened. Once they started granting student loans, okay, and And once the federal government started backing those student loans, we started seeing tuition costs go through the roof. Okay. And tuition costs are growing faster than any other industry in the world or in this country right now. I mean, even as far as medical costs go, okay, tuition costs are far exceeding that. They're exceeding literally every benchmark you look at. Tuition costs far exceeds that. And that is because the federal government got involved in an area that they never should have. And it's just compounded the problem.
Yeah. By the way, I saw in the
Yes,
comments.
they did pass the Patriot Act.
Yeah, we don't have time to go over that tonight, but sadly.
Yes. And that's another huge mistake. And I don't care what I know was instituted by a Republican, and it never should have been. And every time it's came up for a revote, it should have been voted out. But they keep doing it because it gives them too much power.
I don't believe in having secret courts. Defeats the whole
there should
damn point.
Never be a secret court. Okay, there should never be secret warrants.
Defeats the point. Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, we don't have. That's a whole thing all by itself.
That's a whole can of worms, and we will get into it one of these nights talking about FISA. I mean, just the absolute audacity and the complete disregard of the Constitution for FISA is just unfathomable. San Francisco came out with a new law. Grocery stores must give people 6 months notice before they shut down.
And find a replacement.
So basically, even if you are going completely broke, you cannot shut down your store.
It's just a way to punish businesses. It's squeezing the last dime out of private business all the way. It's like, oh, it's not enough. We have to, because then if you don't do it, they can penalize your business. So they get to squeeze more money, even as their policies crush businesses and destroy them. They get to squeeze more money out of you.
Yeah. And
it's a money grab.
I mean, even if your business is not viable, they are forcing you to stay in business. And their quote unquote reason behind it is to quit these food oases or food deserts, I should say.
That's their excuse for it.
And the reason why there's food deserts is because that area couldn't support a grocery store.
Partially because they're allowing people to steal $900 worth of goods from the store without a crime. And how many people does it take to steal nearly $1,000 worth of goods every week before you're out of business? It's their own fault. They created the environment that's closing many of these businesses, and now they're losing the tax revenue on top of the employment in their state. So therefore, they have to go last desperate means to get that funding back, because they're, California's going bankrupt. It is bankrupt, and it's getting deeper into that deficiency. So I'm not surprised they did that.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise me, but this is what we've got to literally start coming together as citizens of the United States and start taking back control of our governments at all levels, state, local, and federal. Okay. At every level, we must start coming together. And we need to start taking back over control of our governance. Okay. They don't understand. Tonight I was met with no notification. Yeah, that I don't get. You should have got.
No, it happens all the time. I'm not surprised. Happens all the time to me.
Yeah.
In my channel, and I know many others that it happens to as well. It just means you're hitting a threshold of attention.
Yeah.
The good news, we've now gotten enough attention in this program that we've clicked into the algorithm that says, oh, and stop letting people know. It's the price of being, the more successful you get and you have an unapproved message, the more hoops and burdens you have to try and get through.
Yeah.
Because they don't want you to get any more popular.
And that's another thing.
Well, we gotta make
the
it
First
real
Amendment.
fast.
Okay,
I gotta
and
go.
I will touch on this more probably next week. Alaska is trying. The governor of Alaska wants to pass a law that is illegal to protest in the streets of Alaska without a permit, which is
I
a
heard
clear
about that.
violation of the First Amendment.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Okay, we'll get into that more. So that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this week. We are about 2 hours, 16 minutes that we've been live.
Mhm.
Folks, I really appreciate everybody that stopped in and was part of the audience. I appreciate everybody in the chat tonight. We had some great comments coming out of the chat, some great conversations coming in the chat. This is only going to get worse until we start deciding to take back control of our government. Okay. The people in Athens, Tennessee said enough was enough. It's time for us to say enough is enough. We don't have to go to the extremes that they did, but there are things that we can do to start taking back control of our country. Okay. One of those things is join organizations like the Liberty First Foundation. We are trying to increase our memberships so that we can better represent you. Together, we have a lot stronger voice than any of us do individually. Okay. So by joining organizations like Liberty First Foundation or any other organizations, your voice will be more likely to be heard. Now, I'm trying to figure out.
Right. You got it there. You got it.
Okay. We are very diligently working on several initiatives, but we need your help. We need members. We need people to say, hey, I'm a part of the Liberty First Foundation. And then we can start saying, hey, we represent this many people, so you are going to listen to us. Look what happened in, what was it, Michigan? Was it Michigan? Where 100,000 people?
Michigan.
Yeah. 100,000 people changed the mind of whatever the population of Michigan is. Okay. It doesn't take a large number, but it does take a concentrated group. Okay. 10 people is not going to be enough. 15 people is not going to be enough. But we start getting numbers up there, then we start having a lot more say. And our voices are more likely to be heard. With that, we are here every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Turn on alerts. Okay. You may or may not get them. It depends on what the algorithm decides to do that week. So with that, we'll see you next week. Thank you, everybody.